Oh no, my pump doesn't work. But before you rush out and buy a new one, we have some quick, easy fixes. To go to the particular problem that you have, take a look at the top of our description. You can jump right to it. Probably the most common problem we run into is we go to pump the tire and it gets a lot of resistance. And with this resistance to pumping, the gauge goes sky high. Presta valves are notorious for sticking, so give it a few taps before you go and place the chuck on. If you notice as you pump, air is leaking out around where the chuck attaches to the valve, good bet you have a problem with the gasket in the pump chuck itself. And we show you in the upper right hand corner a quick fix for at least this type of pump. If you have a dual type of pump such as this, get a little closer you can see, we'll link to a quick fix by RJ the Bike Guy at the end of the video. With this particular pump, when I go to pump it, very little air comes out, and there's a few things that we need to check. First off, examine the tubing and the chuck. Look for any deterioration, cracks, breaks, which may indicate that we need to replace the tubing or chuck. In this case, it looks pretty good, and the easiest thing to do is go ahead and remove the cylinder head. Sometimes they're attached by 2 bolts on either side. In this case, it looks like it just screws off. We can remove it. And examine the end of the piston. In this case, we have a rubber O-ring. We'll go ahead and remove that O-ring and take a look. Sometimes these O-rings can either fray, can break, or deteriorate, and you can replace these O-rings either from the manufacturer. I've even taken down to my local bike store or hardware store and found exact duplicates to replace this. Go ahead and clean it if it looks pretty good, and this one does. And we'll clean the end of the piston head also with just a clean microfiber cloth. I usually stay away from such things as degreasers, because degreaser will deteriorate the rubber or anything that comes in contact with the rubber. Often I'll stretch it and make it unusable. So just use a clean cloth. This looks pretty good, a little dried out. And we'll go ahead and coat the end with some, in this case we'll use silicone lubricant, especially made for O-rings. I usually stay away from most petroleum products of other types because they may deteriorate the rubber itself as the degreaser does. The silicone grease is good. If you don't have that, you can use Vaseline or a synthetic light motor oil. Go ahead and really grease it up nicely with our, in this case we're using the silicone. And then we'll go ahead and reinsert this. Carefully line up the plunger rod vertically with the cylinder. Insert it. And either bolt it, or in this case screw on the top firmly, but don't over tighten. We don't want to break the top plastic of the cylinder. And then we can go ahead and test it out. I'm getting much better airflow having lubricated the O-ring. If this doesn't do the trick, we're going to have to look at other means. By the way, if the gasket at the end of the piston is a leather gasket, as we see in most Silca pumps, these are treated and handled in an entirely different way, especially if they're worn as this one is, and we address that in a video in the upper right. In those pumps where the piston and cylinder look fine, the tubing is not cracked, but you have a problem with the pump chuck, it is possible to obtain a new chuck for just several dollars. They're made in China, by the way, and depending on where you buy them, if they're present here in the US and you have it shipped, you'll get it in a few days. If they're shipped from China, it'll be a few months. To just replace the chuck head, you need to unscrew it in most cases. And down inside, there is a safety pin that keeps the tubing locked onto the chuck, and that needs to be removed. And that could be a little feat in itself. There we go. That could be tough. It is tough. Let's remove that lock nut. Some come with a lock nut, some do not. If they don't, obviously the lock nut that was on there won't fit either of these. So you do want to get a lock nut. First problem that was presented to us when we tried this on several pumps is that the tubing would not fit through the lock nut itself. On this one, we can get it to fit. We can place the chuck head in, tighten the lock nut, remembering that we don't have the safety pin that will keep the tubing from blowing off. See if we can tighten this up. The tubing seems secure. The pump is unlocked in the upright position. When you use it, you press it down to lock it onto the either Schrader or Presta. Our biggest problems that you'll run into is once in a while this is just not secure enough because it doesn't have the locking pin, and the tubing will just blow off the end, or as we see in some cases, the tubing will not fit the lock nut, or I can't really screw it on any more than this. Let's try the other with this lock nut. See if we can undo it. See if we can remove the chuck, which again seems pretty secure. We'll try the other. It goes on a little easier. That's about as far as I can get it. Again, this second pump head, also from China, the open position is like this, and you lock it by turning it up, just the opposite of the other. You'll just have to fool with it. It was secure, and we were able to pump the tire, but again, on some pumps, when you use this, you may blow off the tubing. You may not be able to get the tubing in the lock nut, but for a few dollars might be worth a try. Another option available to us is the Topeak pump repair kit, which includes a pump chuck, either as a smart head recognizing either Presta or Schrader or a dual head, tubing, number of adapters to hook it up to your pump or existing tubing, and instructions. The problems I have had with this is when it does hook up, the lever can be really stiff, difficult to use. When using the dual head, when you throw the pump lever in either direction, it seems to lose a lot of air out the other side unless you do it really quickly. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For $30, not sure it really pays to even give it a try, but I'll leave that up to you. If you have other suggestions for quick, easy pump fixes, please comment below. Subscribe to keep up with our latest videos. This is Tony of Tony 10 Speed. Safe cycling.